Latin is a living dead language dating back 2,700 years. The ancient language of Rome and motherland of many European languages is still taught in some schools and academies, and the Catholic Church also uses in its liturgy, even though it is a dead language. Almost no one speaks Latin, but it persists in not disappearing because Latin is like the source code of medicine, law, and also science and technology. So, does Latin have a future? I'm Constantino de Miguel. Welcome to the Prime Group channel. I still remember back in the days, a few sleepless nights trying to memorize the second declension of the word horse, equus, eque, ecum. It was very hard to learn, and I was not motivated as I didn't see any use of this language. So for me, Latin was a nightmare. But back then, it had to be learned at the secondary school in Spain. And it was said that even if it was not spoken, it served as a mental gymnastics. It expanded your brain. Well, I never understood why German or Chinese were not studied instead, because these languages, they also challenge our learning capacity and are at least very useful for speaking with millions of people. And then we came to the etymology, and there I found great pleasure to know the root of so many words in Spanish. Amor, love, ley, law, libertad, verdad, truth, hospital, hospital, justicia, persona. My mother tongue, the Castilian language, is originally a vulgar Latin, a jabber of that language. But Latin comes from Lazio, the Italian region where Rome settled and also its empire. By the way, a Latino is strictly an inhabitant of Lazio, so no matter how much it is said that the Latino designates Latin American people, but it's technically wrong. I suppose it's too long to say Latin American. Anyway, I prefer Hispanic, but that's another matter. Going back to Latin, it is surprising that a language that is over 27 centuries old still surrounds us and even seduces us, even though no one is able to speak it. There are academies, institutes, and schools in France, Spain, Italy, and Germany where this classical language, as well as ancient Greek, are still taught. What is still very appealing is the etymology, the Latin origin of the words. This is not ignored at all. In fact, it is even essential in the academic and scientific worlds. In biology, Latin is used to name and classify the different species and genera of living organisms. For example, the scientific name for the domestic dog is Canis lupus familiaris, where canis means dog, in Latin lupus means wolf, and familiaris means domestic. In medicine, Latin is used to describe diseases, symptoms, and treatments. For example, the term in vitro is used to refer to a procedure that is performed outside of the human body, such as in vitro fertilization. Additionally, many medical terms such as artery or vein have Latin roots. 60% of the English words used in medicine have a Latin origin. In law, legal terminology is full of Latin expressions such as habeas corpus, which means you must have the body, that is, the detainee's resource for the judge to determine if the arrest is legal. Pro bono, that is, free legal services to people with limited resources. Ad hoc, which means for this purpose exclusively. In science, many chemical formulas and element names are also derived from Latin, not forgetting that Latin is still an important language in the Catholic Church, and many religious texts and all liturgies are still written in Latin. So, with that backdrop, I wonder about the usefulness of Latin in this 21st century for technology and the internet, and there is a debate about that. For some, Latin is actually recovering thanks to the internet, with thousands of web pages written in this ancient language. I'm not referring to educational resources, but there are also blogs, forums, websites, and even podcasts in Latin, and numerous contributions on social networks. Even Google has a Latin version, and there is a Wikipedia with more than 26,000 articles in this language. Videmusne receptam linguam latinam intella totius terrae? Translation, are we witnessing a recovery of Latin thanks to the World Wide Web? Well, I believe this is a false claim. I tell you why. It's true that a globalized world should have a neutral international lingua franca such as Latin was in medieval Europe, or an attempt at a world language such as Esperanto. However, the Latin language is too convoluted. It has too many rigid rules, such as declensions, that are a great obstacle to learning. Meanwhile, English continues to establish itself as the international language, followed by Spanish. If Shakespeare's language contains 60% of the vocabulary from Latin and words borrowed from Latin languages, Spanish, also a world language, the language from Cervantes, has almost 80% of words of Latin origin or borrowings from the ancient language of Rome. So somehow Latin survives in another way through English and Spanish, but also through other key European languages such as French, Italian, or Portuguese. Gratias tibiago quodusque ad finem uius video manere. Si contentus eius fruebas, noli oblivisci similem bulam ferire e in canalem primae grup scribe. Te invitamos a ver este vídeo en español dando clic en la pantalla correspondiente.